In the vast, icy wilderness of Scandinavia, a fierce and resilient people emerged during the 8th century who would forever change the face of Europe and beyond. Known as the Vikings, these Norse warriors, traders, and explorers left an indelible mark on history through their fearsome raids, groundbreaking navigation skills, and enduring cultural influence. Between the 8th and 11th centuries, a period now known as the Viking Age, they launched expeditions that spread terror, awe, and cultural exchange across vast swathes of Europe, parts of Russia, and even North America. The Vikings were far more than mere pillagers, but their legendary ferocity and expertise in battle are what solidified their reputation. These were warriors who embraced death as a path to glory and immortality. Their unique way of life turned them into a civilization that continues to fascinate historians and storytellers alike. To understand what made the Vikings such formidable fighters, one must start with their upbringing. From an early age, Viking boys were trained to fight, hunt, and survive in the harsh conditions of their homeland. Life in Scandinavia was unforgiving. Frigid winters, rocky terrains, and limited resources forced the Vikings to develop a rugged and self-reliant culture. Boys were taught to wield weapons and engage in combat as soon as they could hold a sword or axe. For them, learning the art of war wasn't optional. It was essential for survival and prosperity. This martial upbringing went far beyond basic combat skills. Viking youths practiced glima, a form of Norse martial arts that involved grappling, throws, and weapon techniques. There were two types of glima, one for sport and one for combat. Sport glima, it was enjoyed by everyone, even women and children, for fun and fitness. But combat glima, that was a different story. Deadly and designed for warriors. These rigorous practices didn't just hone their physical abilities, they instilled discipline. And when a Viking stepped onto the battlefield, he wasn't just relying on brute strength. He had skills, honed from years of practice, giving him a deadly edge over his enemies. While their training made them dangerous, the Vikings' weaponry made them lethal. As skilled blacksmiths, they forged tools of war that were both practical and powerful. A well-equipped Viking warrior might carry a sword, a short sax, a type of knife or short sword, an axe, a spear, a bow and arrow, and a shield. Wealthier Vikings? They could afford chainmail and finely crafted helmets, though these were rare. And their weapons? They weren't just tools, they were masterpieces. Take the Ulfbert sword, for example. This blade wasn't just sharp, it was a marvel of engineering. Modern blacksmiths who've tried to recreate it often remark on its incredible complexity, employing techniques that were centuries ahead of their time. For those who couldn't afford such sophisticated gear, simpler tools like axes or spears often sufficed. Many Viking warriors wore armor made from reindeer hide. Chainmail it was not. But for their brutal close-quarters combat, it was effective enough. Regardless of wealth or equipment, every Viking followed one golden rule: never leave home unarmed. The wisdom of the Havamal, a Viking Age poem, declared, "Never take a single step without your weapons of war." In their world, danger lurked everywhere, and a moment's hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. Perhaps the most distinctive trait of the Vikings was their fearless attitude toward death. For them, dying in combat wasn't just a risk, it was a privilege. It was one of the highest honors a Viking could achieve. Why? Their belief was deeply rooted in Norse mythology. Warriors who fell bravely in battle were promised a place in Valhalla, Odin's Great Hall, or Folkvanger, where the goddess Freya welcomed her chosen. These weren't mere afterlives. They were warriors' paradises. Imagine an eternity of feasting, fighting, and preparation for the ultimate showdown. Ragnarok, the apocalyptic battle that would end all things. This belief gave the Vikings a psychological edge that was unparalleled. While their enemies might cling to survival, Vikings charged into battle with no fear. To live meant glory in this life, and to die meant glory in the next. How do you fight someone with nothing to lose? Someone who sees their death not as an end, but as a triumph? That fearlessness made the Vikings extraordinarily dangerous, their determination unshakable, and their attacks relentless. To face them was to face a force that fought like they were already immortal. A crucial factor in the Vikings' unstoppable success was their longships, true engineering marvels of the ancient world. These sleek, dragon-headed vessels weren't just ships. They were symbols of terror and tools of warfare. What made them so formidable? First, they were light and fast, capable of cutting through open seas and slipping into narrow rivers with ease. This versatility allowed the Vikings to strike in places no one thought possible. Coastal towns, river villages, even fortified cities weren't safe. The Vikings could appear out of nowhere, hit with devastating force, and vanish before anyone could organize a defense. Picture this: a typical raid. A fleet of longships sails silently into a harbor, their menacing figureheads barely visible in the early morning mist. Within moments, warriors storm ashore, unleashing chaos. Homes are set ablaze, treasures looted, and the unlucky captured or worse. By the time reinforcements arrive, too late. The Vikings are already back on their ships, sailing off with their spoils, leaving only smoke and ruins behind. But the longships weren't just practical. They were psychological weapons. Decorated with fierce figureheads of dragons or serpents and intricate carvings, these ships were designed to instill fear. Imagine being a villager and spotting one of these beastly vessels on the horizon. It wasn't just a ship approaching, it was a harbinger of destruction. The mere sight of a longship was often enough to send villages into a panic, with people abandoning their homes, knowing the terror that would soon follow. These ships, sleek and swift, carried not just warriors but a reputation that struck fear into anyone who saw them coming. No place was safe from their reach. Contrary to their portrayal as wild barbarians, the Vikings were anything but chaotic when it came to their raids. These were not random acts of violence. They were highly strategic operations executed with meticulous planning. The Vikings knew exactly where to strike. Their favorite targets? Monasteries. These religious centers were rich with treasures, gold, silver, precious manuscripts, and crucially, poorly defended. Monasteries weren't built with armies in mind. They were places of worship, making them irresistible to Viking raiders. The monks? Often unarmed. The treasures? Ripe for the taking. But monasteries weren't the only victims. Coastal villages and river towns were also prime targets. These locations were accessible by longship, allowing the Vikings to swoop in, strike quickly, and escape before local forces could even react. The key to their success lay in their ability to exploit vulnerabilities, and they were experts at it. What truly set the Vikings apart, though, was their deliberate preparation. These weren't spur-of-the-moment raids. The Vikings were master intelligence gatherers, observing the movements of local forces, mapping trade routes, and assessing the wealth of potential targets. They waited patiently for the perfect moment to strike, often during times of political instability or internal conflicts, when their enemies were distracted or divided. This level of planning enabled the Vikings to escalate their raids. They didn't stop at small-scale pillaging. Over time, they launched large-scale invasions, leading to the conquest and colonization of vast territories. In England, they established the Danelaw, a region under Viking control. In Ireland, they founded key settlements like Dublin. They even influenced parts of France and Russia, where Viking descendants rose to power. The Vikings were not merely opportunistic raiders, they were strategic conquerors, combining cunning and force to expand their influence across Europe and beyond. Their success was not just about brute strength, it was about outsmarting their foes at every turn. Among the Viking warriors, there was one group that struck fear into the hearts of anyone who crossed their path: the berserkers. These elite fighters were the stuff of legends, described in sagas as entering a trance-like rage during battle that rendered them nearly unstoppable. Clad in animal pelts, often from wolves or bears, berserkers looked more like beasts than men. Their appearance alone was enough to unnerve their enemies, but it was their ferocity that truly terrified. They fought with an intensity that seemed supernatural, as if they had been possessed. According to Old Norse sagas, they were said to be immune to pain, fire, and steel, a terrifying prospect for anyone unfortunate enough to face them in battle. The mystery of what fueled the berserker rage has puzzled historians for centuries. Some suggest that their fearsome state was induced by hallucinogenic substances like magic mushrooms or the plant henbane, both of which have been found in Viking burial sites. Others propose that the berserker state was a form of self-induced hysteria or perhaps even epilepsy. Whatever the cause, the berserkers were the epitome of relentless aggression. They embodied the Viking spirit, unyielding, fearless, and deadly. And their legend has endured as one of the most fascinating and fearsome aspects of Viking warfare. While their raids brought terror, the Vikings' expeditions also fostered cultural exchange. They established trade networks that connected Scandinavia to regions as far-flung as the Middle East, Byzantium, and even Central Asia. Through these networks, goods like silver, silk, spices, and glass flowed freely, enriching Viking societies and influencing their culture. In return, the Vikings introduced their craftsmanship, mythology, and seafaring technologies to the regions they encountered. Viking settlements, such as those in England and Ireland, became melting pots of Norse and local cultures. These interactions profoundly shaped the language, art, and governance of the areas they settled. For instance, the Danelaw in England, territory under Viking control, became a place where Norse law and customs blended seamlessly with Anglo-Saxon traditions, leaving a lasting legacy on the English legal system. As the Viking Age progressed, their influence expanded far beyond raiding. By the 10th and 11th centuries, many Vikings had transitioned from raiders to rulers. They established settlements and kingdoms in places like England, where King Knut the Great ruled a North Sea empire, and in Normandy, which became a powerful duchy under Viking descendants. However, the very factors that had made the Vikings successful eventually led to their decline. As Europe became more organized and fortified, the opportunities for easy raids diminished. The spread of Christianity also played a role, as it eroded the Norse pagan traditions that had fueled their warrior ethos. By the 12th century, Viking raiding had largely ceased, though their cultural legacy endured. The Vikings were not merely marauders, they were explorers, settlers, and traders who left a profound impact on the regions they touched. They connected distant parts of the world through trade, spreading goods, ideas, and cultural influences across continents. Their craftsmanship, particularly in shipbuilding and metalwork, set standards that resonated long after their time. Even today, the Vikings remain a source of fascination. From blockbuster films to academic studies, their story continues to capture the imagination. They remind us of a time when courage, skill, and audacity could shape the course of history, and their enduring legacy serves as a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the human spirit. The Viking story is not just one of conquest and plunder. It is a tale of exploration, adaptation, and influence that continues to resonate in the modern world. As we look back at their achievements and their brutality, the Vikings remind us of the complexities of human ambition and the enduring allure of the sea. By reflecting on their legacy, we see a civilization that was both fearsome and innovative, leaving an indelible mark on history that continues to inspire wonder and awe.